Welcome to this simple VirtualBox lesson. So today we'll download, install VirtualBox, and then create two basic VMs. One will be CentOS and one will be Linux. Let's talk about VirtualBox a little bit. So VirtualBox is a Type 2 hypervisor, meaning it runs on top of another existing OS such as Windows, Mac OS, or Linux. It allows you to run another OS within itself, right? So in other words, if you have a Mac OS, you can easily run another instance of Linux or Windows within it. So this is a fantastic tool that VirtualBox offers. So in terms of installation, it's rather simple. For Windows, it installs just like any other program. You just download the file and double click on it, double click on the executable. Same idea with the Mac OS. So if you have, you would first download for your OS itself, and the download links are here, and then usually found in the middle. So you'd click on your respective type of OS, and it would simply download the file. Once that completes, I would go through the usual typical installation process, and that program will be installed. So I've gone ahead and downloaded, and I've already done that. So I already have an instance of VirtualBox running, and this is what the interface looks like. And this looks rather simple, but now I have to take another step. I will need the CentOS, which is the Red Hat based Linux OS. I will need the ISO file eventually, as well as the trial version of Windows 10, which is also available on Microsoft's website. So here's the download link for CentOS. If you go to centos.org/download, you'll see for both download links for version 7 and version 8. And then the Microsoft website, if you search for Windows 10 trial, it should land you here, and you download the enterprise ISO. So each of those files will take a couple of minutes to download depending on your internet speed, but for simplicity in this tutorial, I've already downloaded both of the files and simply renamed them. So I have them here in a folder, and I have my VirtualBox running. So this is within a Windows system, right? So let's go ahead and go through the motions of creating the very first VM, right? So you would click New, give it a name. So I'm going to call it my CentOS or Linux, whichever you want. So by default, it creates under user profile, which is very important to notice, but I like to specify where I want to keep my VMs. So I will keep them here in a specific folder. This is entirely optional. So you can update that path if you'd like. VirtualBox will default just based on that name alone. It automatically recognizes that it is a Linux, Red Hat. So there's nothing need to be changed there. Hit next. So in this screen, you would allocate the memory amount. I would allocate, let's say, 4 gigs of RAM. Hit next. Leave it as default. Create. A default option is fine here also. Don't need to change anything there. Next. So this is where it gets interesting. So this is the hard disk capacity. So I'm gonna assign 60 gigs for this. Mind you, so this will not consume 60 gigs right away. So this is a virtual amount. So create. There you go. So on the left, I have just created a VM. Now, let me correct that. Let me use a different word. I basically just defined a VM. The VM is actually not created yet. So if you try to start it, it will not work because we haven't gone through the installation process. So that is the next part. which is why we needed the ISO file to be downloaded from CentOS website. And let's go ahead and create the Windows, define the Windows VM as well. So let's go ahead and create another one. Let's call it Windows. Again, I'll keep it in the same directory just to be consistent. Let's give this same amount of RAM, 4 gigs, and I'll repeat the same thing, same exercise, and 80 gigs. Create. Okay, so far I've defined 2 VMs, but none of them are actually created. So that is the next step. So how do you create those VMs? So recall those ISO files, right? The CentOS ISO and the Windows ISO. What we need to do is go ahead and install them. So I'm going to pick the first one, CentOS. So in the middle, you'd see that the optical drive under storage. So you'd click here and choose a disk file. I'm sorry. Choose a disk image rather. Let's add, and we need to locate. Okay. So now that the image is selected, so this means when we turn on the VM, this particular one, it will boot from that CD. So let's have a look at that. So unlike the first time, right, when it gave it an error, you can see that it's booting up from the disk. So we can go ahead and install it. So one particular thing about Linux is that it runs something called the live environment. So it's as if the OS was already installed. It runs a read-only instance of that. So while you can, if you're connected on the internet through Wi-Fi, you can surf the internet, that's fine, but it will not necessarily save your changes there. If you do see any error messages here, that's okay, you can simply disregard. So while that's happening, I'm going to go ahead and define the Windows VM, same idea. Under storage, where it says optical drive, I'm going to choose a disk file. So this time around it's going to be the Windows ISO file. Okay, so you can see that it has changed. It is now pointing to the Windows ISO. And when I start this VM now, let's give it a second. Move it over here so you can see. There we go. So I have 2 instances running. One is the Windows VM and the other is the Linux VM. Okay, so as you can see, the Windows starts the installation process right away. Let's see what's happening here. Okay, so that might take a minute. There you go, looks like they're both ready. Okay, fantastic. So this is the live environment of CentOS. So as you can see, if I'm connected to the internet, right, I can simply open up the browser and go somewhere. But if you want to install software, make modifications, or create files, what we need to do is we need to go through the installation process. and that is located under System Tools. So if you click on Applications, System Tools, and Install to Hard Drive, so that will open up the installation wizard, which we need to go through the process and complete that, where you'll create the username, give it a system name, and all the good stuff. So once that happens, you then have an instance of CentOS, which is permanently installed on, and you don't have to. There we go. So this is the wizard where you'll answer a series of questions and go through the wizard, and in a few minutes that process is completed. And then when the system reboots, it will tell you you have a running instance of CentOS.